A little bit about myself. Ali Hussein, as Ron mentioned, cloud solution architect on the Microsoft team here supporting retail consumer goods industry. And I specifically work with Coca-Cola system, both the main company as well as all the different bottlers. What I'm here to talk a little bit about today is sort of what is Microsoft's view on hybrid technologies and how we are helping customers like Coca-Cola and others bring and solve hybrid scenarios with Microsoft technologies. So that's going to be the topic of today's session. Now, I plan on talking going through the different services that we have and at a high level. And then, more than happy to do a follow-up session with anybody and provide more details because there's a lot to talk about within these technologies. Now, let me just sort of level set on sort of what are we hearing from customers around their requirements as it relates to supporting and building these environments and applications on top of these environments, right? As you can imagine, that there's tens or hundreds of apps on very diverse set of infrastructures, both ranging from on-premises, colos, custom hardware, and then obviously cloud vendors as well across the board. And what we hear is there is a need to be able to govern and operate across all of these disparate sort of environments. That's a challenge that we hear from customers. The other one is, hey, even if the other aspect, we want to not only learn how to operate within these disparate environments, but also want to make sure that we do so with security in mind for not only the internal teams, but also across the organization as these businesses work across partners and vendors and geographies as well. So security is a big concern. The other element is with as you can imagine that there's been a ton of innovation on the open AI tooling around open AI and ensuring Microsoft customers and their developers are provided these tools to build the next generation of applications to solve problems. Want to make sure that as we operate across these environments, we don't compromise on those developers' abilities to utilize new technologies, right? And new services that come on board to the platform all the time. Now, there's an added layer depending on which industry you're in, less so in retail, but in finance and other industries, there's regulatory requirements imposed on the organization apart from the standard CIS requirements. So these businesses, especially in different verticals, have to adhere to those as well. And what this does is it introduces a problem of managing hybrid technologies and doing so across platforms, right? And in order to solve for that problem, Microsoft has come up with this hybrid technologies, right? And the reality is, before I dive into what those technologies are, the reality of the customers, at least in the enterprise space, are the vast majority of them do have hybrid environments, right? And have a strategy going forward that includes multi-cloud as well. And the key drivers are, as I said, right, like they have to support legacy systems as well as the custom requirements for sort of the next generation of technologies and apps that need to be developed. Talked about regulation and data sovereignty, especially in today's day and age. That's becoming more and more prevalent. And then sometimes it's just speed of light issues with latency and technical hurdles that need to be solved, especially in the for example, some of the projects that I'm working on around manufacturing, the amount of data that gets populated by on-premises machines just has to be processed at the edge, right? So there's inevitably a hybrid set of technologies that need to be brought to solve those problems. And then sometimes it's just being late to the game, right? Not having a proactive strategy on how you would account for when cloud is a directive being provided to you from business. A lot of times we see that as well. Now, what's the sort of the Microsoft angle to this is bringing a consistent Azure platform for both hybrid and multi-cloud, right? So our customers currently use the Azure platform for being able to do the deployment of their operations, governance, security. What we are looking to do is with this set of technologies called Azure Arc, and I'll talk a little bit in more detail about each of these. But with Azure Arc, we are going to bring these capabilities down to where the customers are, right? So whether the customers are running hardware, VMware, GCP, AWS, we will bring these Arc-enabled services to where the customers are running their compute layer. And those include Azure Arc-enabled infrastructure, which includes servers, Kubernetes, Arc-enabled application services, and Arc-enabled data services, right? They are within these technologies, and I'll go into each of them in a little bit more detail here. Within each of these technologies, the scenarios that we're looking to solve are really around security and governance, right? Being able to, the second one is dev tools and practices. And then the third one is apps, data, and ML services, right? Like those are the three sets of scenarios that we're looking to solve for with these Arc-enabled technologies. From touching quickly on security first, with Azure Arc and what Azure Arc allows the security teams to do is be able to secure and improve their security posture, not only for the resources that are deployed in Azure, but also resources that are deployed across data centers and multi-cloud as well. So with the combination of Azure Active Directory, Azure Defender for Cloud, and Sentinel, you're able to now touch with identity management, access, and protect with policies and Sentinel's ability to take actions. You're able to have that holistic coverage of your infrastructure across platforms, right? So that's one example. The other one is being able to govern and ensure compliance across platforms, right? So with as I mentioned, with Azure Policy, you can proactively apply these policies. Not only historically you've been able to apply them for resources that are deployed in Azure, but again with Azure Arc, now you're able to extend that out to other platforms as well, and have that holistic view on where you currently in real time stand against the protocols or that are being applied to you, either because of industry that you operate in or within business. Right, so that's another example. Double clicking into Azure Arc. Now, Azure Arc has different services within it that make hybrid possible. The first one that I'll talk about here is Azure Arc enabled servers, right? And what Azure Arc enabled servers does is all the activities that a customer can do on Azure deployed VMs can now be done for VMs or bare metal machines for that matter, that they would be able to do in Azure. So for example, being able to reach from an inventory perspective, being able to configure via extension, whether it's config management or security monitoring, update management, all of that can be done all through the Azure API. Whether that API is the portal or the ARM API. And then, same thing with govern. I talked a little bit about policies. Now those policies can be applied to these services that are outside of Azure. So as a simple example, a lot of times we actually most enterprises don't allow port 22 SSH or RDP 3389 for any VMs that are deployed within the environment. Now, with Azure policy, historically, you could do that for VMs that are deployed in Azure. How do you take that and apply it to other platforms, let's say on-prem VMs? That's through Azure Arc-enabled servers, and then Azure policy will be applicable there, right? And then obviously secure as well. You can extend the Azure Active Directory down to on-prem as well. So all the operations that are done through the VM on the platform can now be controlled essentially. Arc-enabled VMware vSphere. This extends for all the environments that on-premises that are running VMware. Essentially, what Arc-enabled VMware vSphere does is it installs as an appliance, and then from there, you're able to control VMware vSphere from the Azure portal or the Azure API, right? And it allows you to have all the VM sort of life cycles, whether starting up VMs, resizing, all of those activities now can be done from a single pane of glass in Azure, right? And then obviously with that provides all the Arc-enabled services features that I talked about as well, from an Azure management services as well, whether it's monitoring and others as well. So just at a high level, that those two are sort of infrastructure focused. The next two that I'll talk about is sort of dev tools and practices, right? So that's being able to create cloud native services, microservices applications, and then being able to maintain them at scale, right? So all the way from an app developer to VS Code, being able to apply these tools all holistically to a platform with inbuilt integration, right? So that's what Azure Arc and GitOps can provide for developers. One of the main tools that others have talked about as well is obviously Kubernetes. Now, the problem that we run into with Kubernetes is each provider of Kubernetes has their own opinionated Kubernetes with an entire ecosystem of how you operate and manage those Kubernetes, whether it's AKS, OpenShift, EKS, and others as well. With Arc-enabled Kubernetes, what it allows you to do is connect those Kubernetes into Azure. And then from there, very similar to how servers operate, you would, as a customer, be able to now operate these Kubernetes and the deployments within those Kubernetes all through the Azure control plane as well. So that's the other one. Now, quickly talking about sort of apps, data, and ML services. And this is really top of mind with a lot of the recent announcements coming out of Microsoft, where we want to be able to make these services available for data scientists to be, or businesses that have data outside of Azure, to be able to utilize these services, Azure services as well, with OpenAI and other cognitive services, where we will manage the data on premises, and the entire life cycle of interacting with that data will be done on premises with the help of these technologies that I'll talk about, whether it's app development or any of the business applications that can now be trained and inference, all without the data leaving the customer compute environment, whether it's on-prem or competitive clouds like AWS and GCP as well. So that's a little bit about that. Double clicking into data services. So Azure SQL. Historically, we've asked customers to move their SQL in Azure with Azure SQL to be able to benefit from all the cloud capabilities that we offer. Now, we realize, as mentioned earlier, there's many a multitude of different reasons where the data cannot leave on premises, and for those reasons, those customers still would like to utilize the features that are available on Azure SQL. So the way to solve that challenge is to bring the capabilities down to where the customers are, right? And that's where Azure Arc enabled data services come in, and SQL runtime, database runtime, and Postgres are the first two. And what they allow you to do is essentially get a hybrid SLA, even though the compute is not running in Azure. This can be any hardware and any Kubernetes, right? So that's Azure Arc enabled data services. The other one is Azure Arc enabled application services. And again, in order to build a fully functional business applications being running on-prem or hybrid or the edge, you need these other PaaS services as well, such as API management, logic apps, functions, and others as well. And this allows customers to not only build cloud native applications on Kubernetes, but also cloud native applications on the Azure platform with first party PaaS services like the ones that I just talked about. And this provides the flexibility to run and build on top of open source toolset, as well as Microsoft first party as well. So that's Azure Application Services, and then this is the most recent one, Arc enabled machine learning, where again you're able to build models all from the Azure portal that are interacting with data on premises, or in multi-cloud or edge cases, right? And what this allows you, the business to do is iterate faster and bring value to the bottom line consistently and in a repeatable fashion. Talking a little bit about the entire stack that Microsoft brings to bear, is we've talked, it starts at the hardware layer. So we will, with Azure Arc enabled infrastructure, which includes AKS, VMs, and servers. We also have this Azure Stack HCI component as well. It has multiple different flavors, so we can work with customers that have hardware investments outside of Azure Stack historically, such as Lenovo, Dell, HP, and others, as well as we have offerings that bring Azure Stack HCI along with the hardware. So now we provide the flexibility to continue to leverage the investments customers have already made, or allow them to make net new investments on the Microsoft stack. And then from there, on the Azure Stack HCI operating system, we allow the customers the ability to run VMs natively, just like any other hypervisor, as well as our AKS running on HCI. And then from there, talked a little bit about Azure Arc enabled data services, and then the native, cloud native apps being developed on that. So this is the technology stack all up that we are seeing customers adopt for their hybrid use cases, such as manufacturing, retail, financial services, and others. Also, there are different form factors for different types of industries. So all the way, and with Azure Stack HCI, we provide these different form factors, both from a first-party perspective as well as working in conjunction with our OEM partners like Dell, HP, Lenovo, and others as well. So I'll stop there. I did provide a lot of information here. We do have, now in order and how we sort of bring this to bear in front of the customers is with our cloud adoption framework, right? And we have a lot of collateral already created around cloud adoption framework with a hybrid lens. So this link that you see here, you will find a lot of architectures, a lot of best practices, and references of how we have built different types of applications using these technologies that I just talked about. And to get started, we have a ton of great content already created. And I'll share this deck with Ron for you to get these links, or I can even paste them in the chat. But I would encourage everyone to take a look, and a ton of this is hands-on, where you will be able to bring up any of these environments and get hands-on training on these Arc-enabled resources and technology. So with that, I will stop and just thank again Ron and team here for putting this together. Every time it's great to see different speakers from industry come in and talk about what's top of mind for them and their customers as as the underlying technology evolves. So again, a big thank you, and hope we keep doing this.